Welcome to Sunday Reach by Dominicans in India.
Welcome to Sunday Reach by Dominicans in India. My dear brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, as we celebrate the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time, the Lord reminds us of one beautiful truth through the readings. God alone can satisfy the deepest hunger of the human heart through His compassionate love. The Gospel begins with these words. When Jesus heard of the death of John the Baptist, He withdrew by boat to a lonely place by himself. John the Baptist was not simply another prophet. He was Jesus' cousin, his forerunner, the voice crying in the wilderness, and the one who courageously gave his life for the truth. His death marks the growing rejection of God's kingdom. Jesus knows that John's fate foreshadows his own passion. How does Jesus react? Jesus withdraws into silence. St. Jerome explains that Jesus did not withdraw out of fear of Herod, but with divine wisdom. His appointed hour had not yet come. He also wished to teach his disciples that there are moments to step away from the noise, entrust everything to the Father, and continue the mission according to God's timing. I remember a similar moment in my own life. On 7th August 2018, while I was still a deacon, my father passed away. His body was kept in the mortuary because the funeral would be held on 9th of August. Those were some of the longest hours of my life. My mind was filled with questions. I was grieving, confused, and uncertain about the future. Human thoughts overwhelmed me. I did not know what to do, so I went into the church. I sat quietly before the Blessed Sacrament. I simply remained in silence before Jesus. And in that silence, something changed. The Lord did not remove my grief, but He gave me peace. He strengthened my heart and inspired me to continue faithfully in my vocation. That moment before the Eucharistic Lord became a turning point in my life. That is exactly what Jesus teaches us today. When sorrow enters our lives, our first instinct is often to search for answers, to seek distractions, or to complain. Jesus shows us another way. Before He speaks to the crowd, He first enters the silence of the Father. Many of us carry grief, the loss of a loved one, illness, disappointment, broken relationship, or anxiety about the future. We cannot always explain our suffering, but we can always bring it before Jesus in the silence of prayer. As St. Teresa of Avila says, "Let nothing disturb you, let nothing frighten you. God alone is enough." If we bring our pain before Christ, He transforms it into strength for our mission. Then the Gospel says something beautiful. Jesus comes out of His own grief and sees the crowd with compassion. His pain does not make Him turn inward. Instead, it enlarges His heart to love others even more. That is the transforming power of prayer. It changes not only our circumstances, but also our hearts. In the Gospel, further we see the crowds discover where Jesus has gone. Instead of finding solitude, He finds thousands waiting for Him. Jesus could have said, "Please leave me alone. I have just lost John." But the Gospel says He saw a great crowd and had compassion on them and healed their sick. Look at the sequence in this moment. He sees, then He feels compassion, then He acts. Jesus never looks at people as a crowd. He sees every wounded person. He sees every sick person. He sees every lonely heart. His own sorrow does not make Him self-centered. Rather, His suffering makes Him even more compassionate. My dear brothers and sisters, further we notice the disciples see a problem, and Jesus sees this problem as a mission. As the evening comes, the disciples look at situation logically. There was no food, no shops nearby, things look impossible, so they tell Jesus, "Send the crowds away." Jesus tells them to do something challenging. You give them something to eat. Here, Jesus is educating his disciples. He is teaching them not to dismiss people's needs, but to become instrument of God's providence. According to St. John Chrysostom, Jesus already knew what he would do. Yet he asks the disciples to feed the crowd so that they may discover both their own insufficiency and God's infinite power. God first reveals our limitations so that we may rely on His grace. The 5 loaves and 2 fishes are brought to Jesus. He takes, He blesses, He breaks, and He gives. These are the very actions repeated at the Last Supper. Saint Hilary of Poitiers sees this miracle as a foreshadowing of the Eucharist, where Christ continues to feed not merely hungry bodies but hungry souls. The greatest hunger is not for bread, it is for Christ Himself. In today's first reading, Isaiah cries out, "Come to the waters, why spend money on what does not satisfy?" Isaiah speaks about a hunger deeper than physical hunger. We sometimes spend our lives chasing wealth, success, pleasure, and recognition. Yet our hearts remain empty. The crowd in today's gospel came looking for Jesus. They probably expected only healing. Instead, they received healing, teaching, and bread. This is exactly God's invitation through Isaiah. God never gives only what we ask. He gives what we truly need. Isaiah promises a banquet. Jesus fulfills that promise. The miraculous feeding is therefore the visible fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy. The God who invited Israel to his banquet now prepares the banquet himself through his Son. In the second reading, St. Paul then takes us one step further. After Jesus feeds the people, the question remains, will God continue to care for us? St. Paul answers with absolute certainty. Nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Notice that beautiful progression here. John the Baptist is killed, evil seems victorious, Jesus himself experiences grief, yet his love for the people does not stop. He heals, he teaches, he feeds, and Paul tells us this love never ends. Not persecution, not hunger, not suffering, not death itself. John the Baptist lost his life, but he was never separated from Christ's love. The crowd lacked food, but Christ never abandoned them. We face trials, losses, and uncertainties. Yet the same Lord still feeds us in the Eucharist and assures us that nothing can separate us from His love.